Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's webinar. I see there are a couple of you, and it's about to be a lot more of you. So we're going to wait a minute while Whitney lets people in one at a time. Like, you're in, and you're in, and you're in. So we're coming in. Matt, that made you laugh a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, for the wrong reason.
And you're in, because it sounds like you're at the pool. I totally get it. All right, so we're still filling the room up. Give us about a minute. Let everybody get here, and then we'll jump into it. It's going to be a good talk tonight. This new digital SAT, it's coming up around the bend.
It's here.
Last day of February. February's done. March is marching on. I have to send a birthday card like today, my nephew. I'm going to probably be late. His birthday is 333. Isn't that the coolest birthday ever? 3303. That's a great birthday. He's, of all my nephews, that's the one that I know. Of all my nephews and nieces, like, a simple birthday.
Oh, I mean, you haven't met your other nieces
I
and
don't
nephews?
remember the other birthdays. It's on my, but
Oh no, I thought you meant them just as people. Yeah,
no,
yeah,
I know I've met them, my cousins, my
okay.
nephews and nieces. I'm a good uncle, really.
Okay,
So Dave's
I
kids are
believe
in
it.
Toronto, which is really a different country. That's hard to be a good uncle for
Literally,
a country. All right,
we got,
so
we got a
you
good
know
group
what?
here.
I think it's 8:01. Why don't we jump in and we'll still get a few more folks trickling in, but I think we're hitting a plateau. Not a ceiling, it's a plateau. And let's give introductions. Dr. Jed Applerouth, founder of Applerouth Tutoring Services, and my main man,
Matt
Matt.
Kiesner.
Matt Kiesner. Matt is wicked smart, knows this test back and forth. I'd say he's one of the testing experts probably in the country about this test. He writes our materials, analyzes tests, our practice tests. Matt knows his stuff back and forth. So we're talking tonight about what's going on with this new, the new digital SAT. We've been talking about this for a couple of years because we had the first administration of the digital SAT for international students. It's been a full year, and the PSAT. So we have experience with this test now. And we think it's going to be a very good rollout, hopefully this month for the March kids and then beyond. So let's jump in kind of broadly. Applerouth, what are our primary focus? We help change students' beliefs, give them new experiences, new confidence, then we change their outcomes, and then we change their lives. There are three things that we do very well. We do academic tutoring, helping kids with calculus and physics and Latin and writing. Then we do, in the middle column is today's test preparation, helping kids with PSATs, AP exams, AP physics, AP calculus, AP chemistry. And then we also do coaching for students on executive functioning, helping kids learn how to take their resources and just do better globally. That's one of my favorite things to do. So today's test prep. Now, the digital SAT, that's going to be first on our agenda. Then strategies, that's mostly Matt. For reading and writing, and then math, it's actually all math. Then preparation the day of, what that entails. And then some global tips of doing your best. How do you perform optimally on this assessment? And then Q&A. We will always have time for Q&A with this hour. All right, the format, short and sweet. You have 134 minutes. That's 2 hours, 14 minutes. Very quick test. We love it. Kids love it. The admins love it. And it's a short test. Look at the number of items. 98 total items, and that's it. That's the shortest number of items in history on an SAT. That's a big deal. You also have each section has 2 pretest questions, which are experimental, which don't count. So of the 98 questions, 8 of them don't actually count towards this test. They're helping predict levels of difficulty for future questions and making sure there's no bias in any one question. All right. Now, the test is an adaptive test, which is the reason it's so short. You're able to go from classical testing theory, which is I have to ask a bunch of easy questions, a bunch of middle questions, a bunch of hard questions on every single section. That goes away. Now, what we're doing, we're able to adapt the questions to your level of ability. And reduce the number of items, and we gain efficiencies there. So everybody gets the same exact baseline, both for verbal and for math. And then after your baseline for verbal, it gives you an adaptive section. And that module is going to be either slightly easier than your baseline or a little bit harder. Then there's a 10-minute break. Then you go into the next section. And then again, your baseline and then the adaptive module. That's it. So you have 4 modules total, 2 verbal, 2 math, 10-minute break in the middle. And the second module is always the adaptive module, which is predicated upon your performance on the baseline, the first module, which is the same for everybody. Makes sense. All right, now there are questions we get sometimes of how do I know if I'm going to end up in the easy or hard module? And it has to do with how many you get right, which you don't know during the test. It doesn't tell you that. And so if I get about 2/3 right, I'm going to go to the hard module. Below 2/3, I'm going to the easy module. They don't tell me during the test. And you know what? They don't tell you after the test. The only way to find out is if I get over a 660, if I get a 670 or above, I went into the hard module. If I get below a 440, I went into the easy module. If I'm in that 450 to 660 range, I have no idea. I could have gone to the easy module and crushed it, could have gone to the hard module and done very poorly. But they don't ever tell you that in the feedback. So the name of the game is don't worry about it. And there's also a piece I'll talk about a little bit that different items have different weights. That this, there are like, I think 5 different weightings of questions, which is very different than on the old SAT where it was one raw point equates to, one scaled point. It was very clean. Now it's this question could be worth more, this could be worth less. But again, you have no idea. And they never tell you also in the score report. So these are things that are just inside the machine, which really don't affect anybody's process. So the name of the game is don't worry about it. But because there are these distinctions of easy and hard modules and also differential item weightings, the score return is much less transparent, and they really give you very little back, which is one of the trade-offs. We get a short test, it's adaptive, but we get less feedback. And that's the nature of the new SAT. But again, one of the keys we tell our kids again and again, don't worry, or am I in the easy or hard module? Don't worry if it's an easy or hard question. Just keep focusing the same on every single item, and that's the key. The administration, your kids, if they're juniors, they've already seen it. They've already downloaded it. They already know what it is. Over 1.5 million kids took the PSAT back in October, and it's on the exact same application. It's the Blue Book application, which you download to a Chromebook, you download to a laptop, to a MacBook, to a tablet. You bring it in and you practice on the same thing, and it's the same thing on the actual test. So kids are very familiar now with it. They've already taken the test on it. And this application, Blue Book, locks down your Chromebook, your laptop, your MacBook, so nothing else runs. There's a little timer in the center. You enter a code when you get to the test center. They give you the code, and voila, your test is unlocked. You actually download the test a couple days before your administration, but it stays encrypted and locked until you go to the test center. Here's your code. Now it's opened up. Because of that, it takes only seconds to unlock versus waiting for the whole thing to download. So you need Wi-Fi literally for a few seconds. That's it. You need Wi-Fi at the beginning for a few seconds. Then you do the test, then the very, very end for sending your scores. But otherwise, you don't need Wi-Fi at all during the test itself. That's a pretty cool feature of this new test. All right, so taking it, you get a timer in there. You get a proctor who actually has a tablet, which is monitoring every single student in the classroom, seeing if kids are stuck, having any issues. That's pretty cool. You can bring your own calculator, but there's one that's embedded called Desmos, which Matt will cover in detail. And you also have 3 pieces of scratch paper. If you need more paper, you raise your hand, they give you more paper, so you have more scratch. And if you have accommodations, once you enter your code and you log in, boom, your accommodations are loaded in to the SAT. If you had time and a half, it's right there. If you get extra breaks, it's right there. All these things are just baked right into the test. All right, a few tech questions. There really aren't that many, but ultimately the tech issues were minimal. There was one hard day, I think it was October the 11th, I believe it was, where we had a ton of kids on the East Coast, 500,000 kids trying to log in at the same time. And it was a spinning wheel. They didn't have enough capacity. That was a one-time event. It was solved by 9:15. And then there were no problems in the Midwest, no problems in California. And since then, they've learned, make sure we have expandable capacity and more servers ready to go. So it never again has a spinning wheel when it's one of those capacity days. That really is more for the PSAT day because you never have that many kids taking the SAT. That's just one day where a million kids took it in one day, which you never have that for the SAT. In the event your machine freezes, everything is being saved automatically to your hard drive, like Google, documents, and it's all being timestamped. So if I have to turn my computer back on, it opens up to I'm on question 13, 4 minutes left, and go. So you don't lose anything. It's all being saved, to your laptop or tablet. It should always be charged in advance. If you have power issues, there's a dedicated IT room that can help you charge things, but typically you want to have your charger with you and you want to have it charged up all the way. And that's it. If you have time and a half, double time, they give you help with power. They make sure you have a cord for an extension cord. And Chromebooks are only acceptable if the school distributes them and installs a Bluebook app for you. All right. And now I'm going to hand it over to Master Matt.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Jed. So we'll talk about some of the content for both the reading, writing sections and then the math. We'll start with reading and writing because that's the first in the test. So the test now, the reading and writing questions, and writing being grammar, those are all they're combined into one section. And so the structure is going to go through both modules. They're going to start with craft and structure, and so there's going to be some words in context, and that's going to be a blank where you have to find the correct vocabulary word. Text structure and purpose, which is like what's the structure of the passage, or what is this one sentence doing? What is it contributing? And then one of the modules will have this cross text connections, which is a small comparison passage. And then it's going to seamlessly transition into information and ideas. We're going to have the central ideas and details, which are kind of classic reading questions. What's the main idea? What do we know about a character? Then it's going to move into command of evidence, which are these questions about finding the right evidence either from a graph or table, or providing evidence that would support a claim made in the text. And then those will finish with inference, which are there's a passage, and then you have to choose the answer that is the best final sentence. And then it keeps moving along, and it goes right into grammar. So standard English conventions is would have been previously its own section called the writing section. Boundaries is going to be punctuation and clauses. Form, structure, and sense is going to be verbs and pronouns and dismiss modifiers. And then the last part is going to be expression of ideas. Transitions are going to be should you use, however, or furthermore for what's logical in the text. And then the last ones are rhetorical synthesis, which are bolted lists where you have to kind of make a determination. We got an example of that one. It makes more sense if you see it, honestly. All right. So let's talk about main strategies. Because these are all short texts with one question, it really makes sense on the SAT to read the question first to determine what you're focusing on. Part of that is you're trying to identify what kind of question type this is, so that you know like what's important. Next, you want to read the text of the question in mind, and knowing that if it's asking for what the underlying portion does, or what the main idea, or the blank that you need to put a vocab word in, you'll be focused on that idea. And then what's always going to work great is that it's easier to eliminate answers than to find the right answer. And so going through those is always going to be the best part. So this is what Bluebook looks like. We're able to get an HD slide here. And some of the things of the tech on here that you should know is that one, there is this button here. There's the answer eliminator. And I would click that on the first question, and that will have it where you can then get rid of answers you don't like. So if you don't like A, there will be a little icon here, and then you can do it, and it'll actually cross that A there for you. And that if you want to annotate, you can. It is kind of a weird process where you have to underline the text and then hit that annotate tool, and then you can write a note. We're a big fan of annotation in terms of paper tests and longer passages. For this test, it's used as needed, to whatever works for your working method. You also can mark for review in terms of what you want. If you want to come back to that question, because when you're in that module, you can move freely through that module. I think some concerns that people have is that you're locked, like it's sequential, and that it's judging your first question to judge your second question, and that's not the case whatsoever. It looks at how you did on overall in the module, applies this item response scoring, and then gives you that second module. So you can move freely throughout there. You don't need to worry. So if you're not sure about something, definitely use the mark review so that you know which questions to go back to if you have some time in the module. All right, and kind of got ahead of myself on there. So this is what the mark review thing. You can see that if you were to click on it at any point, you can see the questions answered. So this student has answered 1 through 3, and then 5 through 9. The student has skipped 4. They've also marked 6 for review, so they answered it, but they're like, if I have time, I'm not sure if I like that answer. And so be certain to use that so that you can answer uh, as you go along. All right, so we're going to go through a couple of common question types and some strategies for those. This obviously won't be everything, but I think there's some good advice here. So we'll start with the words and context questions. Again, these are the vocab on there. Um, so it's always asked the same question of which choice completes the text in the most logical and precise word or phrase. So we look at our passage here. It says, frustrated with the blank of existing terms, this author coined the term African futurism to describe the genre of science fiction that is rooted in African experiences and perspectives, and that focuses on what is and will be, rather than what could have been. All right. So our clues on here is that we know that this author is frustrated, right? So we want we're frustrated with existing terms, and the author came up with coin means a new term, right? So we have a new term for this. I mean, go through the answers. Would you be frustrated with a variety of existing terms? That doesn't seem to be the issue here. Why would you want to, if there are too many, why would you make more? Partial limitation, yeah, that makes sense. We'll keep that one. If frustrated with the precision, again, why would you be frustrated with precision? And then frustrated with obscurity. Obscurity isn't the same as limitation, right? Because that would be they uncovered a term, right? They found one that was no longer used that would be helpful. But it says coined, and so that would mean that means they made a new term. So B's are best answer. And next we got a command of evidence, and so these ones are that the answer choices may be actual quotes for things, and so we don't have much of a text to read here, but it says the spring is a 17th century poem by Thomas Carey. The poem, the speaker compares changes to the season to the adjective is beloved. So that's the idea. We have changes in the season, the adjective beloved, and so we need to find a quote from the poem, which is weird because we don't get to read the whole poem, and you're not really expected to have read this poem. But we're looking for clues that show some sort of contrast, right? So the first thing is like, now the earth's gone, the earth has lost her snow white robes. So that's not that seems to be talking about earth. It's personification of earth, not the beloved. So that isn't a comparison. And now no more the frost, candies the grass on cast icy cream, upon the lake, silver lake and crystal stream. I don't see anything that talks about the beloved in any way on that, so that would be out. To the dead swallow, wakes in the hollow tree, the drowsy cuckoo, and the humblebee. I'm going to assume that the beloved is not a forest critter on there, and there's really not talking about season, so we don't even have to make that inference. So hopefully D looks good. Nor hath the scalding noonday sun the power to melt the marble ice, which she does hold. Her heart congealed, make the pity cold. All right. So we have the noonday sun, all right, and that it can't melt her the marble ice. So her heart's congealed, so solid and cold. And so that's the comparison, right? We have hot and cold, right? The sun is hot. The beloved is not, and D's our best answer. Right. Old poem, mad about a girlfriend. Okay. All right, and then we got these inference questions, and so these are always going to say which choice most logically completes the text. And so we got the text here, something more from the sciences, right? So we've got polyurethanes are commonplace, especially in seat cushions and furniture, durable in a variety of conditions and versatile. However, and we always want to pay attention to our transition words here, they are difficult to recycle and contain harmful chemicals. So these dudes have been researching a bio-based alternative to polyurethane using lignin, byproduct of the paper pulp industry. Initial tests have been positive. That's good. And they created a process to completely recycle their bio-based foams. As the research continues, they will need to determine. So we're trying to figure out what's the next step from that. And so we know that polyurethanes are they're good, but they're difficult to recycle, and they're not made of the best stuff, right? And so that would be what they're trying to fix. So Will their films be appealing to consumers of furniture? That seems like it has to like, is it even good stuff before we get it like people like sitting on it, right? I don't think it's all about comfort or style, whatever. Can be varied and durable as polyurethane forms. Okay, well, they said that they were durable and versatile. So that's a pretty good synonym match. You should definitely keep that one. Will be adopted by the paper pulp industry. Uh, it's coming from this lignin stuff, right? Which is not paper pulp. They're using the paper pulp, so this is a complete trash answer. Can be create comfortable cushions and furniture. This is kind of like a. It's not about how it is received; it's about like what it could do. So B is your best answer, sure. And then last one here for our reading is rhetorical synthesis, which I had mentioned that in that list. It's easier to see. They're easy to tell because it always says the students writing topics, and then we have it's going to be a bulleted list. There's a very specific strategy that works. That you want to read the question. So here's the student wants to introduce the research of Aubrey Schmidt to a audience already familiar with global warming. Okay, so we want to introduce the research of these people, and they're familiar with global warming. Um, and then at that point, you can actually just go to the answer choices, and you don't actually have to read the list. Uh, that it's actually easier to find the answer without all the information that's in the list if you just look at the answer choices there, right? So we got volcanic eruptions, minor, major. That's not even mentioning the scientist names, so that's definitely out. Global warming continues to be a major concern, right? And these folks have a strategy to combat using volcanoes. I mean, that's definitely better than A. We can keep that for now. All right, so the scientists are using their expertise on how volcanic particles can move around the global atmosphere and determine if a major volcanic eruptions could mitigate global warming. I think that's even better than B, right? On there, looking good. And then scientists can use models to predict how volcanic particles from minor to major eruptions can distribute around the world. Um, that's that doesn't mention anything about global warming, and it doesn't really mention their names. So that doesn't look good. I think of these two, uh, C is better because it says that you don't need to explain that global warming is an issue, and this thing does, right? And so that negates that answer. And C is a better choice, and then the best choice. All right. So let's move on to math. All right. So one thing to note is that both math modules go easy to hard in there. The and even that second module, like if you get to the harder module, the second module can still have difficult questions, or sorry, can still have easy questions at the beginning, and like don't worry about it. There will be multiple choice questions, but there'll also some of them will be student produced responses where you need to type in your answer and make sure that you're accurate with that. The main thing is that if you have a decimal that's non-terminating, you need to fill up all the decimal places. So if your answer is 1/3, if you put 0.3, it reads it as 3/10. If you put 0.33, it'll read it as 33 hundredths. So you have to put it like I think 4 threes on there, or you could do the fraction, just do 1/3. And that's kind of good to know on there. And there is going to be Desmos built into there. So the calculator, if you click on it, the calculator button, it will launch Desmos. And part of it is you just want to like, and most of what we're going to focus on tonight is learning some Desmos tricks. You'll have your scratch paper. You can definitely bring your own calculator if you want. Though I think once you learn how to use Desmos, you'll probably think that you'll probably see the advantage compared to like a classic TI-84. So it's mostly gonna be focused on algebra. If you have taken algebra 2, um, or in algebra 2, you should have seen most of the concepts. There's going to be a little bit of data representation, a little bit of geometry, and a little bit of trigonometry, though not really going into the trigonometry you typically would see like in a pre-calculus course. So for the math there, um, the calculator is on there, and then if you need geometry formula reference, you can click on that. It's got all the classics of 2D and 3D geometry. And do remember to use it. There's not going to be a lot of geometry, but they might start asking about like volume of a sphere, and maybe you don't remember that off the top of your head. Um, but that formula is in there. You just have to remember to use it. And it's funny the calculus symbol doesn't look anything like Desmos, but that's what's in there. But same things you can mark for review. You can do answer eliminator. you can jump around. All right, so there's fewer math questions. There's fewer reading problems than prior. They really want the reading to be about reading and the math to be about math and not have a lot of overlap in those two subjects. Um, so the prior test had a lot of word problems, and they've reduced that quite a bit on there. All right, so let's look at a math strategy. So you want to read the question and determine your goal. What is the question asking, right? What are you solving for? Are you solving for X, or are you solving for like X minus Y? Are you solving for the side length? Are you solving for the perimeter? Whatever that is, right? You want to plan your attack. That might involve you making an equation. That might involve putting it into Desmos, right? Like is your first step, right? Then you need to compute. Don't skip steps. Keep track of work. If you're having to do algebra, write it down on your paper. And then I think the most important thing is to double check that you answered the question asked. The wrong answers are typically things that are also true. So if you're trying to solve for the value of X, Y is one of the wrong answers. If you're trying to solve for the area of the circle, the circumference is one of the wrong answers. Like those are the things that they create on there. So knowing how to use Desmos is definitely the most useful. And if you're and maybe we're doing a little too much inside baseball. So Desmos is a free graphing calculator, and you can access it right now. Though wait till we're done. Desmos.com. It's free. It loads on any browser. It runs on your phone, and it is a very capable tool uh, for doing lots of different kinds of math. So let's try some Desmo stuff. So we got a system of equations here. One thing is that we see that we got our system of equations there, and we're looking for the value of y. Okay. Now one thing is that these are not in your classic y equals mx plus b form, but that's okay because Desmos does not care. Compared to a TI calculator where you have to put it in function notation, you could do it that way. You'd have to do all the algebra to get it where y equals. But Desmos is a free spirit, and you can do whatever you want. So next slide, you can literally put it in as given, and then look at the graph. And if you're looking at a system of equations, the solutions is where they touch, just by definition. And so that means when x equals 5, y equals 3 for both equations, so our answer would be 3. Then we got quadratic and a function notation. Function notation works as well. You actually can just put an f of x in there, or you can switch it to y. It works either way. So here we're going to have to do one more step. So it's like the function has zeros of points a and b on xy coordinate plane. What is the distance between line segment a, b? So this is going to involve an extra step. It's going to be fine. So we're going to plug that into Desmos. And so we're looking for the zeros. And so one of the things is that it's going to lock on if any equation that crosses the x-axis. And so we know that the zeros are negative 3.5 and 3. So what that means is if you plug in negative 3.5 or 3 into this equation, you get 0. And then we have to remember what we're asking for. Is that we're now making a line segment, so it's the distance. So the answer would actually be the distance between negative 3.5 and 3, which would be 6.5. That would be our answer. And then we got really gross stuff, like dealing with some rational expressions here. Really things are equivalent. And can you do this the math way? Yeah. And in fact, on the old test, we had to, where you'd have to figure out a common denominator. But Desmos is going to do this just fine. So on this one, we're going to mix the what's given to it with the answer choices, and so you can graph this. It's gonna look weird. It's gonna have some asymptotes. That's fine, but it's totally graphable. And then we can graph our answer choices as well in there. And so we kind of try to set this up. The next slide there, and so hopefully you can see this all right. But the idea is you graph the given expression, and then you graph the other ones, and you look for the one that matches. Because you can have two graphs on there, right? And so A is not a clear match at all. B is getting a little closer. C is looking pretty close. but D is like exactly the same, and you can turn them off and on to make sure that they match. And so you just put those in. I wouldn't put all five of them at the same time, right? Because one doesn't work, you can delete it or change it and get rid of it. But then you can find the one that matches, and that's a valid solution. All right, Jet.
All right. So Matt mentioned briefly that, we talked about there are these different modules. We have easy to hard. And within each module, you're going to have a mixture, a combination, a recipe of easy, medium, and hard questions in every single module, whether you're on the baseline or the adaptive. So I just want to give you an example of what this looks like in practical, in use cases when you're actually in the mix. So let me show you this. The baseline module, let's say for math, you have 20 items. It looks like this. This is from the Blue Book app. You have only 2 really easy questions. They're called level 1 questions. You have 10 level 2, so 12 total on the easy and easier side. Then the hard ones, you have 7 level 3, and you have 3 level 4. So we're mostly in the middle. We have the most items are level 2 and level 3. It's a grand total of 17 of our 20 items are in the middle, with a few on the edges. That's the baseline, trying to tease out. And if you get 2/3 of that right, you're golden. You're going to the harder module. If you get below 2/3 right, you missed 7 questions, 8 questions. Well, boom, they're going to have you go to the easy module. And now you can see where it's heavier. It's heavier on the easy items. You have 7 level 1 questions. You have 9 level 2 questions. So 16 of the items are level 1, level 2. We're skewing easy. And then you have far fewer on the hard side. You have only 5 level 3 and only 1 level 4. So the assumption is you missed 7 items. We're not going to give you a bunch of really hard stuff. And that's how we become more efficient. By limiting those really hard ones, we're able to get you there faster with fewer items. If, however, on the baseline section of our 20 items, you get more than 2/3 right, let's say you get 15 right, boom, you've earned the right to go to the hard module. And that's going to look very different. So whereas before you had, you're stacked in the middle, on the hard module, it looks very different. You don't have 7 level 1 questions, you have only 1. You don't have 9 level 2, you have only 4. But level 3 is popped from 5 to 12, and level 4 is popped from 1 up to 5. So that's how you get fewer items, by giving you items that are relevant to you and eliminating the items that are irrelevant to you. That's how this thing gets short and sweet. All right, now we mentioned that different items have different weights. You'll never ever know which ones are easy or hard, but the scoring, as Matt mentioned, is algorithmic. Part of it, the scoring, and actually post hoc, they're going to analyze how all the kids did on that, and they'll reapply weights to different items, which is interesting. So it's not just one raw is one scaled. Nope, this one counts a lot more. That's also a way they can help predict. They understand that I could give 7 algebra questions of this concept, or I can get one that's pretty indicative of your abilities and count it more heavily. And then in lieu of asking you all these algebra items, I can ask you this one and these 2, and then boom, I've knocked off a bunch of items, and we get the same answer more quickly. Now, again, don't worry about which section or the weighting or is experimental. Just keep focusing. We mentioned it once before, hitting it again because it really is a big deal. This is part of our big counsel to our students. Just one at a time. Don't worry about the rest. There's no way to game it and so forth. You also, a critical difference between the old SAT, which is now gone, now defunct, and the new one, and also the SAT and the ACT is time. That they have given every student a lot more time per question. And compared to the ACT, you have 60% more time per question, which is huge, which is a whole accommodation. So in the verbal section, the reading and the English, the grammar, they're giving you 71 seconds per question compared to 44 on the ACT, and you have 1.5 minutes plus on the for a math question versus 1 minute on the ACT. So you have all this extra time, and that's why, honestly, even extra time on the SAT means less than it used to, because so many kids are finishing that couldn't finish before because of they reduced the number of items and they gave kids more time per item. That makes this test much less speedy than the ACT. Although some kids still do very well on the ACT and speed's no problem for them. They really are different tests. And at the end of the day, you want to figure out am I better on the SAT or the ACT? Not just presuppose that it's a short test, fewer items, more time, your kid will do better. Some kids still do better on the ACT, quite a few do. All right, so the other piece, you're gaining efficiencies in a massive way. So the old SAT for the verbal section, you had, I should change it from current to former. You had 96 items on the verbal section. On the current ACT, you have 115 verbal items compared to on the digital SAT, you don't have 115 items, you have 54 items. That is a tremendous gain in efficiency. It is a much more, abbreviated test, more efficient. And so you have, fewer items and more time per item. That's lovely. So for many reasons, this is one of the major advantages of a digital adaptive test. You can get to the answer faster. I don't have to use all these wasted items, which really weren't performing for you. If you're a really high scoring kid missing a few items, let me get rid of all the easy ones. And if I'm a lower scoring kid, let me dump the super hard ones because those really aren't relevant to your score prediction. All right. One thing, test security, there are many, many test forms. No two kids will have the exact identical test form. And they're going to vary it by item. And so my number 1 could be your number 7. My number 1 could be your number 15. My answers, are A, B, C, D in order, and yours, they've rearranged them. So my A is your D, my B is your C. Additionally, with the math, we were learning on some of the Reddit forums and from kids that, my answer is 12 pi for this algebra or the geometry question. And your answer is 24 pi. And so they're actually doing some templating. And so the numbers are changing slightly within the same kind of problem. All they're doing is changing from 2 to a 4, and everything doubles. And so very simple. So again, this helps prevent cheating and fraud. And you can't text your friend in different time zones and say, here are the answers. It's C, D, C, A, C, C, B. Nope, not anymore. Now your answers are unique to your test. And this is one of the reasons why schools can administer back-to-back-to-back tests because cheating gets much harder. And so I can give it to the juniors on Monday, the sophomores on Tuesday. Before it was all in one day, not anymore. Now schools have more latitude because of test security issues like this. Matt, up to you, my man. All
All
right.
right. Yeah. Thanks, Jed. So let's talk about how to prepare for this thing, right? So perhaps you're taking the March test, which here is only in a couple weeks, or if you're not taking the March, then there's if you're a junior, there's the May and the June test, and then you gotta take the summer off and it can be back in August. So the first thing you should do is definitely take a practice test on there. There are 4 on SATs on Blue Book on there. If you've taken the PSAT back in October, that is the same format as the SAT, the same number of questions, same structure. The only difference is that the SAT may have some math concepts that kind of go beyond what you would um, you would see on the PSAT, but not like drastically so, on there. And so, as we're kind of saying, like focus on what's in front of you. I like the baseball stat idea of just like, yeah, I mean, every pitcher has an ERA and you have your RBI percentages, but if you're at bat, like you can't be thinking about those numbers. Keep your eye on the ball. Do the best with that pitch. Um, and then learning the Desmos and learning the Blue Book is definitely the best strategy. And like I can say that from our math experts, I've learned a bunch from Desmos even in the last couple months of tutoring students. So before we're almost there. Make sure that you have Blue Book downloaded. If you took the PSAT, you already have it, or so just make sure it's up to date. And they're gonna remind you to do an update ahead of time. That's how you'll be downloading the test beforehand. So that, as Jed had mentioned, is you're just unlocking. Make sure you get good rest, and then the night before, make sure you have your device fully charged, right? You do not want to have a low battery while you're taking the test. So the morning, make sure that you need to bring your device to no matter what testing center is. Like I'm a little worried that some kids are going to walk in thinking that with a pencil and just and a smile and take the SAT. But you definitely need to have your own device and have that done. And make sure you bring that charger, just in case something weird goes with the battery. If you want to bring a calculator, again, there's nothing stopping you for that. And honestly, I mean, like I kind of like having a calculator just to do arithmetic stuff, but for for a lot of the algebra and definitely for graphing, I would use Desmos. Pack a snack for the break is good. Protein is the best thing for your brain. So make sure you have some snack and some water and stuff, so that break in between the two modules, the two reading and writing, the reading writing and in between the reading and writing and math sections. So you have that break. Have a good breakfast, and make sure you dress comfortably. So during it, you're gonna have that code. So you're gonna have your own test form. Don't try to look at someone else's thing, because it's. I mean, the idea like you wouldn't even like sort of being on the same question after like the first 5 minutes. It seems pretty pretty different. But yeah, just focus on the question in front of you. Don't try to overthink this with that response scoring. This is, if there is a way to game it, we're way too early to, we have to learn how to play the game before we figure out this whole cheat thing. And if you're getting stressed out about it, it's better to like pause, recenter, calm yourself down than to like try to use that nervous energy to push through. So when we get your scores, one thing where like it's not going to grade the test in front of you. I think that some people have an anxiety about that until they get that. There are like the tests for like GRE that can do that. They're hoping for like within 10 days of taking the test. I wouldn't be surprised if this first rollout is a little bit slower. Within the first domestic rollout there. But they do promise it fast, and part of this is that they're not using the mail, right? So we don't have to wait for your answer sheet to go back to the grading center. So this feedback is this is from the PSAT, and there is the SAT is going to look like this. We know that from the international students have been taking it, and for this student here, we have reading writings at 6:30 and the math at 6:10. Again, we don't know which module the student ended up in. I mean, the reading writing's probably upper, but math, maybe, right? Maybe that's the upper module. It's hard to tell looking at it. And also, we don't see the number of right and wrong. If you look at information ideas, they're saying, oh, it was about 12 to 14 questions, and then they use the 7-bar system, so the student got 5 out of 7 bars. And so we were trying to look at this. Students seem to be doing great on grammar. Student needs to work a little bit more on craft and structure. Student needs to work on problem solving and data analysis. We've learned a little bit more about these bars, that they're not just arbitrary, like a power meter that just is kind of set up there. There actually are question types that are in this, and that you can decode it online on there, where like essentially it's basically unless you get them all wrong, like you really can't get like the first bar. But as you go through, there's certain ideas, and so that if you're looking at where like this algebra bar here, they are saying, oh, there are certain concepts that you are deficient of because of that you have a lot that you're good with, but there's some that are missing and they're in that category. So it's not just complete, and it's not arbitrary, and it's not really a great indicator of like how many you get right or wrong, because it's conceivable that this student, there's let's say 13 math questions, maybe the student got 4 of these algebra questions wrong, but they were all in the really hard concepts. That could actually how it could sway. So there is some logic to the madness. Is something that I'm still learning how to interpret those. Jared,
When
want
it
to talk about
comes
some
to
accommodations?
accommodations, they're simple. You have your SSD code. If a kid has extra time, if you have ADHD, timing, processing speed, dyslexia, and kind of processing issue, and your accommodation is baked into the computer. So once you enter your code, you go there, you log in, and boom, your accommodation is just right there. Extra breaks, extra time, you can stop it and come back to it. And some accommodations are, changing color or font size, or some kids have text to speech that bring like a little earpiece. And but on Desmos is always there. Everybody has that. That's a built-in accommodation, which is really very nifty, and so forth. They've teased that some people who they've actually kind of buried this information now.
And pull the rug.
They pulled the rug. They talked about the ability of kids to take a paper test, but they've essentially they've hidden this. And so maybe we don't know anyone who's taken the paper test. And it could be I can't read a screen, I have visual acuity issues, apart whatever it is, I need some kind of, honestly, I should probably kill this slide because this was a big thing when they first announced it. There's a paper option if you need it, but now it's like they buried that. So
They don't want you to take the paper option.
yeah, they're not
No
pushing it at
prompt
all. The feedback, we've now had over 7 full SATs that have actually was March to December now. So that we've had all these good administration internationally. The PSAT was very positive, except for that one little glitch on the East Coast for about an hour for some kids. We've heard from everybody, watch your pacing. Because again, if I'm pacing myself on the baseline module, then I go to the hard module, well, I have to up my pacing a little bit because you're going to have a lot harder items. So you can't be kind of going along. I got plenty of time. It's like, no, there are going to be some harder items if I was budgeting my time in the same way I was for the baseline. And everyone says, Desmos, Desmos. You read the Reddits, everyone's like, Desmos saved my life, or Desmos for president, whatever it is. Kids are all hailing and praising Desmos because it's very powerful. And if you know how to use it, it makes this test a lot easier. And so and it's a free resource. You can practice it online. And about half the kids in America have already used it in like their chemistry class or physics class. It's a free resource for kids in high school. So it's amazing to have this resource. It blows away your TI for graphing, and learn it. And then there seems to be a strong preference among our students, among administrators, among kids with PSAT. Kids like the digital SAT, the digital PSAT. And because it's a shorter test, everyone loves that. You have fewer items. There's much less reading, less reading burden. There's much less reading on the math section. So there's a lot to like on this test. And so we think it's going to, it's the wave of the future. And for about, 26 years, there have been major companies administering digital tests like the GMAT and the GRE back in 97, 98. So this is not new. This is actually very old technology. It's finally being used by the College Board. The pandemic forced them into a digital, a mode, and now it's like we can do this. When they had to administer the AP exams, kids weren't in school, they learned a new trick, and now it's like we can do this. All right, so again, more time per question and faster results, all these good things you get from this digital test. It is a better test. The ACT, they are rolling out this year a digital version, but not adaptive, which means there's no reason to take it. There are no benefits. You're not getting any more time, not shorter. It's just the exact same paper test on a computer screen, which is essentially worthless. They do this internationally. They have for the last 3 years, and now going on 4 years, because of testing and cheating issues, because paper was getting leaked. So now they can push the test the morning of, and it's harder for a bad actor to cheat and share it. They were canceling tests, all Hong Kong, all China, South Korea, because of cheating. So this solves for cheating, but for your students, it creates no advantage. So I wouldn't even worry about it. And then for Matt, testing options.
Yeah. So if you're a junior now, like and you've taken the PSAT, that is, you can use your PSAT like, hey, you've had that experience. The PSAT and the SAT are very similar. Did you like it? Were your scores good? Does that make sense? Yeah. Then use that information right from there. And you also can there's nothing wrong with the ACT, right? I would choose to take the paper option because I think there's no advantage to doing the digital for the ACT. And they even have where you have to like the test center has to provide computers, so who knows, you might be on some like 2002 desktop computer trying to with a funky burned out monitor at the school. So who knows what you're going to be using. The so but is the AC a flawed test? No. I mean no flaw, I mean there's nothing wrong with it. It is classic. And it may make sense for you. I still have students that are choosing to take it. So we've been working hard on this. Applerouth is not we have not been resting about this at all. Our stuff's already updated. We changed like we now have a third practice test on there. And our adaptive tests are it's on a digital platform. It's going to have it's going to give you the correct module. We're also going to give you a lot more feedback than what the SAT can, because we want you to improve, right? So we're more transparent in terms of the right and wrong you got it and how to improve on so you can have a nice score report. Go along with that. We still have a book, but it is updated for digital. There we go. They got the digital on there, and all the practice has been updated on that and stuff as well. Like we knew this was coming.
And that's it. So again, we do our three things: academic tutoring, test preparation, and EF coaching. If you need help with any of these things, call us. We help kids all the time. We're helping hundreds and hundreds of kids right now for this March test. All right, so let's talk shop, y'all. What do we have? What are our questions about the forthcoming March 9th SAT? What questions haven't we answered? What are you curious about? Tee it up in the Q&A and Matt and I will field it.
Yeah. So you got a good question here about trig. I did mention that on there. So what trig should I focus on? On there, the short answer is that one, there are very few trig questions. I would say 1 to 2, literally through the math section. Primarily, it's going to be what they call the SOHCAHTOA, so your classic right triangle trig, knowing the ratios for sine, cosine, tangent are going to be what you're looking for on there. They like a little bit of equivalency, so that if you have like a right triangle, like the two complementary angles that are on the non-right ones, that the sine of one is the cosine of the other. They like testing on that. And they may test in radians, which is like which you would use in the unit circle. But that's as far as they go. Even though the Desmos can handle trig graphs very well, if you don't test on it. So you can use Desmos that way. Um, um, that But it's not. I would not put all of my focus on trigonometry. I would just review the main concepts.
All right, Matt.
Yeah.
So we have a student taking in a school day test on Wednesday. What subject should I prepare? If I'm going to prepare for one subject,
But the SAT, I suppose, right? Well, but I understand. What students saying there. Yeah, so you're taking in school tests, and a lot of schools are offering it. They have a testing window here from like March to mid-April on there. And I have one student. She's taking the test on Wednesday next week as well, and then taking it again on Saturday because I don't, life is short, right? You want to take as many tests as possible. The So I mean, you got to think about where you need to put your focus in on between the reading and the math. If it's math, I mean, focusing on algebra and focusing on how to use Desmos is the best use of the short amount of time you have there. For the reading, I mean, like practicing some of those words and context to kind of get used to that form is useful. Making sure that you feel comfortable with like commas and semicolons and that stuff, because those are going to show up in a good frequency on there. And then if you have time this weekend to take a practice test, I think that'd be the best use of your time. Just to get the more fluency on that, and more you can kind of see where you are from there.
that's it. Find 2 hours this weekend, either an Applerouth test for feedback or the Blue Book test. Get a little practice under your belt. That's good practice. How many questions? The verbal section, it goes verbal and math. Verbal is 27 items. 2 of them are experimental. And then you have your adaptive, 27 items. 10-minute break. Math is 22. 2 experimental, then adaptive, math 22. That's it. 98 questions. That's the whole test. It's very simple, short and sweet.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. My kid ain't familiar with Desmos. It's a good place to start by taking the practice digital ST using it. Yes. And or go on desmos.com and practice. Matt, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, if you do desmos.com and like you can pull up the webpage and then you just like start the calculator. It's like the big big button on there. and it's exactly the same thing as all the features on there. And so like to learn like, oh, what happens when I graph an equation? What do I see on there? There are also some good Desmos guides out there. But like getting used to that because they're like there's a lot of little weird features in there, and things with like statistics you can use and shifting functions and all and stuff. So but just getting kind of used to putting those things in would be a good place to start for sure.
All right. What's a good score you want to aim for? Depends on the school you're applying to. If you're shooting for Yale, you want to hit something in the mid 1500s. Shooting for University of Georgia, I don't know, I want to be in the 1300s. I'm going for Georgia State, call it a 1250. Valdosta State, 1080, 1100. So there is no one good score. The whole thing is, what's your list? University of Virginia, I want to be in the strong 14s. It depends on what school you're applying to. So there's no idea of what a good score is. It's a good score. And also the context of you as a student and your high school and what's, your competitive cohort. But I think a safe answer, type in some schools you want to look at and you go on the College Board's Big Futures website. It'll give you the middle 50 percentile of students who are enrolled at that school. And you ideally want to be somewhere in that range, ideally on the higher side of the range for any given school you're looking at applying to. That'll give you a sense of what a good score is. There is no one single, this is a good score, except
She
for
already answered back to Texas State. But is that more than one school? I feel like that would have to be more than
which
one
one?
school. It's on the list, the bottom there. She answered back. Texas State.
Texas State University, TSU. I would need to go and look. I would
Yeah.
honestly Google it and find their type in Texas State University middle 50 percentile SAT scores, and it'll tell you. Because and they're 2,500 schools, and now that they're on different ranges. All right. If you don't think you're going to finish on time, well, if you're curious, as Matt mentioned, do a practice test. Check your pacing. And if you're not going to, ideally, you got time to finish. If not, like, don't spin your wheels and like don't spend more than, like 2 minutes on a question. If you're spending a ton of time on one question, the odds of getting it right decrease. If you're taking all the time in the world, I would at some point skip it, just guess something and then, mark it for review later. Go on to the next one if you're really spinning your wheels. But a lot of our kids are finishing. The vast majority of
Yeah.
kids are finishing their tests. So I would say you might want to try and do a run on the Blue Book and see, is my pacing up to speed? If not, you can try to up your speed a little bit and then learn the right pacing for the test. Matt, thoughts on that with pacing?
Yeah, I mean, I think the hardest one is that if you get to the upper level math section, with that the last questions do take a lot of time. But I think by and large, a lot of students are able to finish, and it's certainly compared to taking the ACT with regular time, the standard timing, which I think is a lot harder for students. But it's like right, don't let one question like stump you, especially on like the reading, writing, or the math, or like you don't know the next question is going to be harder, right? So it's better to move on. I see someone's asking about how to take a free Applerouth practice test. Oh, you lost the
Yeah.
slide there. All right. The So Applerouth.com, and then on the top bar there it says resources, and if you hover over there, it'll say take a free practice test, and that'll get you set up with the SAT one. There's a couple options there. Make sure you choose the SAT.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, there's a right next to upcoming webinars, which is how you got in this room. So,
That
right, a couple
super
asked about,
scoring.
yeah, maybe.
Yeah, super scoring. We have every indication that colleges who currently super score will keep super scoring. They're not going to differentiate, distinguish paper versus digital. So if colleges do super score, and the vast, vast, vast majority do, they will keep doing so. All right, then how to determine whether to send the score in or not. That's
The score and the school, right?
look at the school, look at the range. Are you in the range, top of the range?
Talk to your counselor.
How amazing are your grades? If your academic rigor and grades are exceptional, extraordinary, your test scores in the lower end of that range, I may withhold that test score and go on the merits of my academic rigor and GPA. But if they reinforce, do you want the school to see it? Is it going to add strength to your applications? Like for the APs, I'll send them my 5s for sure and my 4s. A 2, I'll probably withhold. The 3 depends on the school and if they give credit for a 3. But you only want to send things you want them to see if it'll strengthen and validate your academic abilities. Otherwise, keep it to yourself.
Yeah.
Except for the schools now who are requiring it, and it seems like there are more of those happening every day. And so that's, right now we just threw in Dartmouth and Yale and Georgia, and a bunch of state schools are coming next. So, that's why you're probably on the webinar because, yeah.
Yeah, I would say want to talk to your college counselor, in your school, because they're going to know what, especially if you're applying to like a big state school, they're going to kind of know like what the norms are for, for that specific school on both your high school and that college. And also the thing is that like remember that the SC is also can be used for merit-based aid. Here in Georgia, it's important if you want to get HOPE and stuff. So even besides just getting in, that it can really affect how much you pay for the college.
Yep. That's it. And Matt, that's our hour, the hour of power.
Right.
So everybody, thanks for coming out. Hope you learned a few things. If you have any other questions, email us info@Applerouth. If you want any help with these tests, that's what we do. We do it well. So everybody, good luck on the 9th. And we're here as a resource if you need some help. And otherwise, the practice tests, they're online and they are they're a great tool to help you get ready for these tests. All right, y'all.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.